I had always dreamed of a quiet life in the mountains. After decades of hard work, sacrifices, and long nights at the office, I finally built my sanctuary. A sprawling mansion nestled against the cliffs, with glass walls that caught the sunrise and fireplaces that lit up the evenings. It wasn't just a house, it was my proof that all the struggle was worth something. When I moved in, I was told about the HOA, Homeowners Association, that managed the community. Their rules seemed strict, but I paid my dues on time, kept my property pristine, and honestly, I liked the order. At least at first. But as the months went by, I started hearing stories from neighbors. Elderly couples harassed over faded paint. Families fined for planting the wrong flowers. Widows threatened with liens for minor lawn issues. It didn't sit right with me. Still, I never imagined they'd come for me. The morning it happened, I woke to a roar outside my bedroom window. At first I thought it was logging equipment in the forest, but when I stepped out onto the balcony, my heart dropped. Bulldozers, cranes, trucks lining my driveway, men in neon vests pointing toward my home as though at nothing but a job site. I rushed down barefoot, yelling over the engines. "What's going on here? This is my property." A short woman with a clipboard and sunglasses pushed a paper into my chest. Her voice was cold, rehearsed. "Mr. Carter, this property has been seized due to unpaid HOA fees totaling $12,300. You were given notice. Demolition has been approved." I laughed in disbelief. "Unpaid fees. I auto-pay every month." "This must be a mistake!" She shrugged. "Take it up with the board. We're just following orders." Before I could stop them, the machines lunged forward. Walls cracked. Glass shattered. I stood frozen as my library. My father's old books, my mother's paintings, photographs of every milestone, was crushed into dust. Neighbors gathered at the street, some crying, some recording on their phones. A few shouted at the workers to stop, but no one listened. I called the police. They arrived hours later, shrugging like it wasn't their fight. "Civil dispute," they said. "You'll have to handle this through the courts." By nightfall, my dream home was nothing but rubble and ash. And I, once a man who built everything from nothing, was left standing in the ruins, my fists trembling, my heart shattered. The following weeks were a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and lawyers shaking their heads. The HOA had covered their tracks. They claimed I missed payments, that multiple notices were ignored, that the demolition was lawful. I knew it was a lie, but proving it would take years. Still, I wasn't just any homeowner. I had resources, connections from my years in business, and a reputation for never backing down. But more than that, I had something stronger: righteous anger. I began digging into the HOA. At first, it was just for me, a way to fight back. But what I uncovered was bigger than my case. Misused funds, hidden accounts, bribes to local inspectors, entire families robbed of their homes under the same unpaid fees. Excuse. It wasn't incompetence, it was organized theft. I met with neighbors, one by one. People who had been silenced out of fear. An elderly man who lost his wife after stress from their eviction. A young mother whose children cried themselves to sleep after their home was seized. Their stories lit a fire in me. I wasn't just fighting for my mansion anymore. I was fighting for them. With my network, I gathered a team: lawyers who despised corruption, journalists eager for the truth, and even a few political allies who owed me favors. We compiled evidence, testimonies, financial records. And when the time was right, we dropped it all, straight into the public eye. The news exploded. "Oh, Koarpation Skandal," splashed across headlines. Cameras swarmed the mountain district. The once arrogant board members scrambled, denying everything, but the truth was too heavy to bury. State officials launched investigations. The Attorney General got involved. And then came the lawsuits. One by one, the board members resigned, or were arrested. The HOA district, once untouchable, crumbled under the weight of its own greed. Courts ruled their practices illegal. Properties wrongfully seized were compensated. Families restored what could be restored. And me? I didn't just stop at justice. I bought the land the HOA once controlled. Every acre of it. I turned it into a public nature reserve, free from greedy hands. Trails wound through the forest, picnic grounds welcomed families, and my old mansion's ruins were preserved as a monument with a plaque. Here stood a home destroyed by greed. May no one else suffer the same fate. When I stood there at the opening ceremony, surrounded by neighbors who once felt powerless, I realized something. They hadn't just bulldozed my house, they had bulldozed the last shred of mercy I had for corruption. And in destroying me, they gave me the strength to destroy them. So when people ask me, was it worth it? I smile and tell them this. They tried to wipe me off the map. But in the end, I wiped them off the state. In the months after the HOA's collapse, life was strangely quiet. No more threatening letters in neighbors' mailboxes, no more fines for grass too tall, or trash cans left out. The mountain, once wrapped in fear, began to breathe again. Families painted their homes the colors they loved, children played in yards without worry of breaking rules. For the first time in years, people felt free. But for me, the silence wasn't peace, it was a question. What now? I had won. I had erased the HOA's district from the state map. I had restored justice, exposed corruption, and made sure those who suffered were compensated. Yet, as I walked through the nature reserve one cool autumn morning, past the plaque that marked my mansion's ruins, I realized something important. If I stopped here, it would all just fade into memory. Corruption wasn't confined to one mountain. HOAs across the country operated in the shadows, unchecked, unchallenged, destroying lives the same way mine had been destroyed. If I truly wanted justice, I couldn't stop at victory. I had to build a legacy. That's when the idea took root. I founded a non-profit organization called HomeSafe, an advocacy group for homeowners facing abusive HOAs. We offered free legal help, a hotline for reporting misconduct, and a public database exposing the worst offenders. Journalists partnered with us, lawmakers listened, and slowly, laws began to change. No longer could an HOA bulldoze a home over a few $100s. No longer could they operate as untouchable tyrants. And as HomeSafe grew, so did something inside me. The bitterness I once carried began to soften, replaced by purpose. I wasn't just a man who lost his home anymore. I was a man who helped others keep theirs. One evening, a neighbor approached me at the reserve. She was a widow who'd nearly lost everything to the HOA before I intervened. She took my hand and said through tears, "You didn't just save my home. You gave me hope again." That night, I stood by the ruins of my old mansion, watching the stars scatter across the mountain sky. I thought about the day I first saw bulldozers tear through my dream, how powerless I felt, how shattered. And yet, standing there now, I realized something profound. They hadn't destroyed me. They had rebuilt me into someone stronger, someone who carried not just my fight, but everyone's. The HOA thought they took my home, but what they really gave me was a mission. And so, to anyone listening to this story, let me leave you with this: life will sometimes strip you of everything you love. People will betray, systems will fail, and you may feel powerless in the rubble. But within that ruin lies a choice. Will you stay broken, or will you rise and build something greater than yourself? I chose to rise. And that's why the mountain no longer echoes with bulldozers and corruption. It echoes with freedom, laughter, and the sound of justice standing tall. Because in the end, they didn't wipe me off the map. They made me the map.